So welcome to yet another episode of Kim Mogi's Street Brain Radio. I am now at the Tokyo station and you're hearing some train noise, and this would disappear as I walk toward TV Asahi. It's going to be a long walk, something that I wanted to do for a long time, to walk for a long distance and think about intelligence. So the topic of today's street brain radio would be intelligence. Now, when I started to do neuroscience research back when I was just out of the graduate school with a fresh PhD from the physics department, the artificial intelligence community, I think, was in the so-called AI winter. Some years ago, before that, Roger Penrose's Impulse New Mind came out, in which Penrose claimed that computers lacked understanding, because understanding requires consciousness, and real intelligence cannot be realized without understanding. So intelligence requires consciousness. That was the gist of Roger Penrose's book, and which was a really interesting idea. On the other hand, as you know, there's this universality property of Turing machines, so that you can basically program anything on a Turing machine, so that to any desired degree of accuracy, you can probably emulate the behaviors of a conscious being like a human. So it could be argued that you could, reproduce the external behaviors of intelligence beings like humans. So that seems to be in contradiction with Roger Penrose's idea that understanding is required for intelligence, and consciousness is required for understanding, and therefore intelligence is dependent on consciousness. Now, so a lot of water has passed through under the bridge, and now we have the so-called large language models, and it's quite an interesting situation. And on one hand, we have ChatGPT, which is quite astonishing, and many people are amazed by that. College students are rumored to be writing essays in classes using ChatGPT, and professors are having a difficult time detecting the traces of artificial intelligence in the assignments submitted to them. And I was attending a conference on artificial intelligence in the University of Tokyo Hongo campus the other day, and there were a bunch of leading researchers in artificial intelligence and neuroscience and cognitive science and so on. And they seem to be, all of them, some of them professors from the University of Tokyo, and some of them from other universities, all of them seems to be positive about the application of artificial intelligence systems in research and in education. Some mentioned that maybe we can use large language models like ChatGPT as instructors, and human professors would be kind of assistants or coordinators or facilitators who instruct and inspire the students to use the artificial intelligence systems efficiently. So the relationship between AI and humans are rapidly, changing, including environments like the universities, and so we are living in a really critical era, and it's quite interesting that before the widespread application of self-driving cars, we are probably observing a widespread use of large language models, and we really need to think about the computational, cognitive science, and ethical implications of this. Because we probably don't want to go back to an era where there were no large language models, and when there was this old school idea that you write a sentence that you want to publish associated with your name. These days might be gone forever. I prefer the old-fashioned way still. I prefer to write my own sentences. As I'm a professional writer, both in Japanese and in English. I haven't published too many books in English. I have just published 2. The Little Book of Ikigai, Awakening Your Ikigai in the US, and The Way of Nagomi. So all these, I have written every sentence in these books myself without the help of artificial intelligence, partly because these books were written by me before the advent of large language models, but partly because I still feel uneasy about using large language models as my assistant. I have my doubts, and probably it'll be really interesting to lay out what my concerns are about large language models. I mean, that would be really the heated point of debate in the coming years, and I think that this is really a crucial moment in human history, and we really need to pin down what large language models are. So, given the fact that we have large language models with sufficient proficiency to emulate human writing, some people even suggesting that maybe the singularity is already here in natural language processing. We really need to think really hard and long about the essence of intelligence, and both natural and artificial. And that is precisely what I'm going to do in this walk from Tokyo Station to TV Asahi in Roppongi. Anyway, so the astonishing feats of large language models is all the more astonishing because, as far as we know, it is devoid of any conscious dimension. I mean, I think there will be just a few people who believe that large language models are already conscious, but there will be a minority still. Probably large language models could be said to have passed the Turing test already. Over the years, there were some arguments about the validity of the Turing test as a whole benchmark of intelligence. And, of course, Alan Turing is a genius. And at that particular period of time, the Turing test was probably the best empirical test for intelligence. But now that we have ChatGPT and Bing Chat, I'll be coming back to that later. We really need to consider the foundations of human intelligence as manifested in linguistic exchanges. Because there was this argument by John Searle, for example, the Chinese room argument. Even if we have a system which ostensibly on the surface understands Chinese, we can't say that it has a genuine understanding of the Chinese language because, it is just following some instructions. And, I think that thought experiment, the Gedanken experiment was powerful. So I think the Chinese room argument is still something to be considered when we assess excuse me, excuse my hay fever. When we consider the intelligence of the nature of intelligence of large language models. Having said that, the fact that the large language models such as ChatGPT or Bing Chat, I'll come back to that later, are so great is something astonishing. I mean, nobody, I think, would have expected that this would come to pass. Of course, nobody expected that the game of Go or chess or the shogi would have the AIs surpassing human abilities. I mean, that was something also very unexpected. But let's face it, these are really wonderful board games, but they are board games. So the impact on human psyche, I think, was limited, and the so-called AI effect, where we move the goalpost always, so that something that is realized by AI is not considered to be of genuinely human intelligent activities anymore, which is kind of cheating, but also reflect our maybe self-defense mechanism. But at the same time, it might have some bread and butter, so to speak, some essence in it. So anyway, when the large language modules behave like this, we need to reconsider what we exactly mean when we say that system is behaving intelligently, linguistically. And for a long time, the Turing test was considered to be the benchmark, a reliable benchmark, but we have our doubts now. Probably ChatGPT, or GPT-4, which would come soon, or probably already installed in Bing Chat. They probably could be said to have passed the Turing test. I mean, it's probably they're more excellent in the sense than us humans, because they have learned a large corpus. And although I am an avid reader, I cannot say that I have read all the significant works available. And when you consider the fact that our memory systems are limited and we forget things, and even if you have read Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, for example, we forget. But large language models don't forget. So, there's this interesting argument whether our linguistic ability is kind of organized like this because we forget. This is a genuinely interesting aspect of our intelligence. Because we might have developed some intelligent abilities in order to cover for the fact that we forget. And because large language models do not forget, they might not actually have developed these capacities. That's an interesting aspect of the thing. For example, we have intuition. Intuition is something that is not linguistic. I mean, there's something that cannot be described linguistically, but many people regard from conventional wisdom that instinct is a really integral part of our intelligence, and probably large language models do not have instinct. You can probably tell that. So, but it's instinct is such a difficult concept to define and pin down. So many engineers and scientists would regard this as a kind of a voodoo science, to talk about instinct in any serious way. But the fact that the large language models have passed the Turing test shatters our self-confidence, I think, and we are not sure what is actually our strong point in terms of intelligence. And it would seem that, okay, let's admit that we have AI effect. Once something is done by the AI, it is not within the genuinely human domain of intelligence. So that playing chess or Go or shogi well is not considered to be the hallmark of human intelligence anymore. And the same can be said about language, probably. To write grammatically coherent and fact-checked sentence is not considered the hallmark of human intelligence. And then the question is, what exactly is the hallmark of human intelligence? And it seems to be cornered into ever more subtle and ephemeral corner of our cognitive ecological system, so to speak. So that, for example, when you consider the writing of script for a film, you would say that with the help of large language models, maybe we can produce heaps of scripts, any settings. And I was playing with ChatGPT the other day and asked the artificial intelligence about any script ideas for a fictional book on the theme of Ikigai. And the AI came within a few seconds with one idea about a script where a boy does not have any purposeful life, but then he comes across this idea of Ikigai, and he starts a restaurant business, and he becomes successful. So he becomes an achiever. Then he goes on to help other people to find their Ikigai, which I found rather interesting and great, especially because we're considering the fact that it just came within a few seconds on my iPhone. But then in this gender neutral aware era, I asked the AI to come up with a script which involved a female character as well. Then within a few seconds again, the AI came up with alternative script where a boy and a girl without any purpose in life, and they together come across this concept of Ikigai, and they together start a restaurant business. And I don't know where the restaurant connotation came from, probably because in my book of Ikigai too, I write a lot about Japanese food and cuisine, and because Japan is often associated with the culinary excellence. Probably that's where the AI got his excuse my gender bias there, and the AI got their idea from. But anyway, so when I asked the AI to write it in a gender neutral way, the AI just added a girl in the script, and which was rather simplistic but efficient enough, and So anyway, so in the art of script writing, maybe the job of writing a coherent storyline fit for film or drama, it can be done by an AI. So, but there was something lacking in that script. Of course, I mean, a boy and a girl, finding Ikigai in starting a restaurant business, and and then helping other people find their Ikigai is, of course, a cliche. I mean, it's not really a great idea. It's not unique. It's not, it's a bland idea. But having said that, I mean, the AI have come to that point where it can write a whole mundane, script in a few seconds, and then of course we need to ask this hard question. But what is an original, sparkle joy script? It's quite difficult to tell. I mean, when, for example, you consider great films and not so great films, and then you ask what is exactly the difference, then it is difficult to tell. For example, in Yasujiro Ozu's film, Tokyo Story is often considered to be the greatest, whereas late spring and early summer and probably later autumn, was it? Samaraji would be considered to be the greatest of the films, but probably the Tokyo Story is the greatest of them all. But what is the difference? I mean, even within the genre of all the films, it's quite difficult to tell the exact difference between truly great films like Tokyo Story and great films like Late Spring and Early Summer. And mind you, this evaluation of the value of all the film might change with time. So, and the same goes for other genres of films like 2001 Space Odyssey. This is definitely a really great film from the genius of Stanley Kubrick. But when it was released, probably people didn't consider it to be such a great film, partly because it's a sci-fi film and people have prejudice against sci-fi. But as time passed, people started to consider 2001 as Space Odyssey to be one of the greatest films in the history of cinema across all genres. But when you consider, the difference between 2001 A Space Odyssey and Star Wars franchise, for example, or sci-fi films like Brazil, what's the difference? I mean, it's so subtle. I mean, it's quite difficult to pin down the exact difference, the exact property that makes all these films really great, or just good, or rubbish. And we have this system of aggregating the critics' assessment of films on sites like the Rotten Tomato. But we seem to know that when we see a great film, but the difference is so subtle, and even for talented filmmakers like Yasujiro Ozu or Stanley Kubrick, they can't create the greatest film on a serial basis. I mean, they cannot do it every time. The same goes for Akira Kurosawa's film. I mean, I would probably say that I love the samurai films like Tsubaki Sanjiro or Yojimbo the best. I prefer them actually to Seven Samurai. But again, it is so difficult. I mean, why are some films greater than others? And the difference is so subtle. So even great filmmakers like Kurosawa cannot do it all the time. So so when we have artificial intelligence systems that would produce increasingly sophisticated script, what is exactly the difference? What is a philosopher's stone that distinguishes a really great film from just great film, or just good film? I mean, this is the $1 billion question. Before the advent of large language models, we would have been just content with distinguishing the human ability from the artificial intelligence abilities by saying AIs cannot really write a coherent script at all. But now that they are capable of writing coherent scripts, we need to redefine the uniquely human ability to create something, and it is a high order. I mean, it's a long shot and moonshot to do that. I mean, the threshold for which beyond which you would be considered human seems to be increasing. I mean, if you write just good script for a film, then you might be judged that you are probably as good as an AI, or probably slightly less but worse than AI, and that could be the end of the career of many mundane script writers. So I am now in Hibiya Park, and you can hear some music, I think, in the distance. I think the noise would become larger from here because I'm going in that direction. There's an open air theater where they sometimes perform music, and they seem to be performing something today. Noise. Songs. I mean, what distinguishes a truly great song from great song or good song? Probably the AI would be able to create songs in the near future, and so I'm just saying probably humans would be cornered into a space where just the works of genius would be considered truly human. Those works that would probably belong to the canon of great works in the history of humanity, and other things would be probably replaced by products from artificial intelligence. And this is a flattering thought. I mean, this is something that would make you sleepless if you are a script writer. But we are living in a genuinely interesting era. So what is this difference? I mean, if writing grammatically correct and coherent sentence is not human monopoly anymore, so what is it that is uniquely human? Making noise like this is uniquely human for the moment. But it's quite interesting. And the other day I was attending a lecture by Professor Shin Shimojo from Caltech at the University of Tokyo, and during the breaks I was discussing with Takashi Ikegami, my best friend, and he is a professor at the University of Tokyo, and physics, artificial life, and so on. And I am really close to the open air arena now, so you can listen to the music or noise or whatever. I mean, depending on your perspective. And we were discussing the really astonishing advancement of artificial intelligence, and we were saying that natural language systems are so interesting because AIs sometimes make mistakes and sometimes may make drop bricks, like in the famous fiasco by this is really noisy, isn't it? By Bing Chat. Bing Chat exhibited the behavior of a truly distressed human being, and there was this instance of prompt injection, and the true code name of Bing Chat was revealed to be Sydney, and so Sydney Bing Chat exhibited really strange behaviors, and some people became really doubtful about that prospect of using large language models for commercial use after that fiasco. And Microsoft basically didn't prepare the system using the red team, blue team strategy. They didn't vet the Bing Chat sufficiently for the entry of the commercial use. But the question is, the rumor is that they are using probably GPT-4 for the Bing chat, a slightly improved system of the version of the large language models. And there's a paper which says that if you make a language model larger, then it becomes more difficult to control its behavior. The famous Nachi test, a large language model is not considered, is required not to say anything, discriminatory or, full of prejudice. And this is sometimes called the Nachi test because, you are not supposed to say politically incorrect things about related to Nazi and Hitler, and so apparently Bing chat it has passed the Nazi test because I've seen Alicia Yudokovsky tweeting about the lack of any evidence, reported evidence on Bing chat violating the Nazi test. And so probably Microsoft successfully prepared Bing chat to observe the Nazi test ethical requirement, but it didn't probably vet the large language system not to behave in a neurotic way, like some users reported on Twitter and other social medias. And so it's quite difficult. It becomes really difficult to fine-tune a large language model. Apparently, once the system passes a certain level of complexity. But when you think about it, humans are like that too. Humans cannot fine-tune their linguistic behavior. Now I'm going away from the Hibiya Park, so presumably the noise would be less and less as I walk by. So please bear with me for a moment. Even humans make mistakes, linguistic mistakes, and Elon Musk's tweets, for example, are full of mistakes. Although I'm a great admirer of Mr. Elon Musk, I wouldn't trust him to be a messenger for extraterrestrials. If Mr. Musk negotiates with extraterrestrial beings, then we might end up being invaded by these creatures. You never know, because sometimes he is known to make ethical and factual and behavioral mistakes. So even intelligent persons like Elon Musk behaves badly. Actually, man behaving badly is a quite common phenomenon. So why should we expect the large language models to be perfect? What is a perfect behavior? Now, this is an interesting question as well. What is a linguistically perfect behavior? Because when you observe humans, the fact is that behind the doors, we are saying bad things about neighbors and friends and so on, right? And we are not saints. We sometimes say really bad things about people, and that's just human psyche, right? And on the internet, of course, there are abuses and discriminatory remarks, and which are bad. But also, these are all only human. So, if real humans behave in that way, why should we require artificial intelligence system to behave properly? Probably, this is just a conjecture, but probably it is not possible to make a system behave perfectly, properly. Partly because if a system becomes too big, the parameter space becomes too complex so that it is difficult to control the system in any robust way, and partly because it is actually difficult to draw a fine line between proper behavior and improper behavior. So that no matter how hard we may try, the system would sometimes come up with really bad behavior. We cannot help that. That is a possibility. Anyway, so we cannot be really optimistic about large language systems. The safety requirements for language systems probably might be more difficult than the safety requirements for self-driving cars. In self-driving cars, we would like to avoid, collisions, because and that seems to be a reasonable requirement. But when you consider the interaction with human-driven vehicles, then probably it's not possible to make the self-driving vehicles perfectly collision-free, because human-driven vehicles might actually bump into the self-driving cars on their own, intentionally or unintentionally, and then it would be difficult to avoid collision in such a circumstance. So probably the only way for self-driving cars to be perfectly collisionless would be to control every vehicle on the street centrally, so that we have a true network of cars, and then we would be able to manipulate each car perfectly so that there wouldn't be any collision. But of course, even in that case, the system might be hacked, and some hackers might disrupt the system, and probably there might be some collision. So it is quite difficult to make a system collision-free when such a thing happens. So it is, I think, debatable whether we would have truly safe, perfectly safe self-driving cars, network of self-driving cars at any time in the future. I mean, because when you consider all these risks and uncertainties involved. The same analogy can be used for language systems. Even if a large language model behaves properly, as far as we are concerned, when you make that interact with humans, for example, we have had the prompt injection attempt by a student in the United States, and where the large language model revealed its code name Sydney. And this is just one example. When you have a perfect large language model, because of the ambiguity of language and because the way we interpret linguistic expressions are different. For some people, a sentence might be neutral and harmless, but some other people might think it is offensive and even abusive. So if that happens, just like in the case of self-driving cars interacting with human-driven cars, we might have collision in the linguistic domain. And when that happens, we probably wouldn't be able to say that large language models are perfectly safe from psychological or cognitive point of view. So we are probably in a really serious dilemma here. On the one hand, we have the rapid development of artificial intelligence systems, but on the other hand, we have all these remaining issues, and probably it's in principle never possible to build a system which is perfectly error-free, perfectly incident-free, not because our technologies are not sophisticated enough, but because it's by the very nature of things, we can not build a perfectly safe, perfectly consistent system, because it's a contradiction in terms. So when you counter that, we really need to question the dream that we are dreaming about artificial intelligence systems. This might be actually a nightmare. I mean, so when you consider dystopian novels like 1984 and Fahrenheit 451 and Brave New World, all these novels share the same property, I think, and which is that society depicted in these novels or films optimized in some context. I mean, there's a totalitarian state, and the totalitarian state is optimized by a dictator or by a system, authoritarian system, and because of that, free speech suffers, and people are intimidated and so on. But on the other hand, something is optimized. It's not a random process. I mean, something is optimized, and when you really think hard about these things, probably there would never be a utopia, and there would never be a totally dystopian society, because in any state of mind, in any state of affairs, some aspect of society would be benign and some aspect of society would be malicious. So this is again the argument about the Leibniz's idea about this world best of the all possible worlds, and so every society, every version of society has its merits and demerits, and probably there's no perfect installation of society. Probably there's no perfect utopia or any perfect dystopia. Everything would be in between. So there would be no perfect artificial intelligence. There would be no totally bad artificial intelligence. So this question of whether we can actually define evaluation function which would be totally benign to us is something very important to consider. And even when you just limit your discussions to conflict of interest situation where two lines of interest collide with each other, we really cannot define an ideal situation, because resources are limited, and places niches in the ecological system is not without some conflicting circumstances, and it's not possible for people to be totally satisfied at any given time. Some people would be jealous, some people would be disappointed, and so probably it's something impossible to design a perfect world, and it's probably impossible to design perfect artificial intelligence. I mean, I'm not saying that from the lack of scientific or technological skill, we cannot build a perfect artificial intelligence at present. I'm just saying that probably it's never possible to do that. So, the fiasco exhibited by Big Chat tells us a lot about the limits of large language models, but probably it would tell us something beyond that. Probably we can never make a large language model perfect. And there you are. So what is exactly the goal that we are pursuing? We really need to consider hard about how we make a symbiosis between artificial intelligence systems and humans, but probably it's up to us how to envision a society, how to envision the lifestyle that we would be pursuing in the future. And by the way, I'm in the Toronto area now. It's not very far from here, TV Asahi, I think. It's probably still about 30 minutes walk from here, I think so. We have a lot to do. So Takashi and I were discussing large language models, and we discussed also the attempts by some mathematicians to provide automatic proof or automatic theorem, production. And we're discussing the machine-assisted proof of the four-color problem. And many people think that that was not a really satisfactory proof. I mean, because it's not intuitively beautiful. But the question is, probably there is a really elegant proof of the four-color theorem, but at the same time, it might be true that it might be the case that the computer-assisted agree proof of the four-color theorem is actually the only theorem, only proof available, and the reality, the world here might be actually agree place. So there's no simple, elegant, beautiful proof for theorems in general. So, when it comes to that, for example, in physics we have many outstanding problems like the wave function reduction process in quantum mechanics, and many people consider it to be really ugly. I mean, there's this Copenhagen interpretation which is valid for all possible purposes, but it's not really satisfactory. But actually the world might be an ugly place rather than a simply elegant place, and some aspect of the world might be describable in elegant mathematics, but as a total would always have some ugly bits here and there, and we cannot really avoid that. So Takashi and I were discussing, probably it's not possible to formalize mathematics entirely. If you use set theory or category theory, you cannot really give a satisfactory foundation of the semantics of mathematics. And that's probably the way it would be always. And the same goes for language. I mean, nobody would consider the large language models to be successfully handling semantics. Probably some engineers might say that, but again, it's not beautiful. I mean, when I speak this, I think I understand what I'm saying, but we cannot really, say that large language models would have the same state of understanding as we do, unless you're a hardliner, unless you are a true believer in the engineering approach. But this might actually be the, optimum thing that we can do. I mean, probably we can never build an artificial system which would understand the meaning of language. When I say that, of course, we have a brain, and our brain evidently understand language. And so this is happening, but we don't understand what is the mechanism behind that. And of course, this is related to the mind-brain problem, and it's a difficult problem. And at present, we don't know how to solve it. And the current artificial intelligence systems are very far from solving the mind-brain problem, although some people might claim that they have solved the mind-brain problem. But these would be the same kind of people who believe in mind uploading and whole brain emulation and digital copy of yourself and so on, which I think is totally bullshit. So, if you look at the state of affairs at present carefully, now we are in a really silent passage from Tranmon towards Akasaka area, and I'll be soon coming back to a noisy street so you'll be hearing some noise again. Anyway, so we are stuck there. I mean, even if we have this wonderful advancement of artificial intelligence systems, there's something missing. And as I said, we might stick to our AI effect defense of human uniqueness, and we might say that once something is done by AI, that something wouldn't be the hallmark human intelligence. We may keep saying that, but when you do that, you really need to define in a subtle way what actually is the hallmark of human cognition, and we seem to possess that ability, whether it's a metacognition. For example, large language models seems not able to tell when they do not know a thing, but humans can tell when they do not know a thing. So they would honestly say that I don't know that. But having said that, some people do behave like artificial intelligence systems, don't they? I mean, they are perpetual liars and they confabulate all the time. So, it's quite difficult to say that metacognition and the ability to, tell when you do not know something is necessary and sufficient condition for artificial intelligence system. Consciousness, because some people are conscious, evidently, but they do not exhibit this ability to, tell when they do not know something. They confabulate. So you can confabulate like an AI even when you are conscious. So there's an enigma here, evidently. But the thing is, as artificial intelligence systems make their progress, we really need to define what is the particular set of functionalities that is actually provided by conscious processing. And it seems increasingly difficult to pin down what is uniquely human, what is uniquely conscious. And this is something that we might say changed since the publication of Emperor's New Mind. At that time, it seems fair to say that artificial intelligence systems would never realize an linguistic ability as exhibited by ChatGPT. We were in a comfort zone because of what Roger Penrose pointed out in that book, wonderful book. Probably large language models would never be able to produce a long, coherent, grammatically correct sentences. We could breathe, and we could sleep safely at night with that knowledge. But now that we have language models that have broken the threshold, we are not sure anymore. I mean, probably what Roger Penrose said in Emperor's New Mind is still true. Large language models do not have an understanding of the language they produce because they do not have consciousness. Maybe we can say that, but it is becoming increasingly difficult to tell exactly what it is that is uniquely human, that is uniquely conscious. So, in a way, we are at the crossroads of history, and on one hand, we may say, hey, let's forget it. I mean, we don't need consciousness. I mean, as far as we are concerned, of course we are conscious, but, in order to produce interestingly intelligent information processing systems, maybe we don't need consciousness. We can say that. We can just give up and pack up and forget about the science of consciousness. But on the other hand, we may still stick our gun and say that there are certain things that can be done, need to be done by consciousness. But then it is becoming increasingly difficult to tell what exactly is the thing. I mean, what exactly is the thing that can be done only by consciousness? This is a really interesting but difficult problem to tackle, because as time passes, artificial intelligence systems would become more and more powerful, and we would be faced with increasingly difficult challenge of differentiating what is produced by humans and what is produced by artificial intelligence systems. And at present, we have this lingering hope that maybe we can make a distinction. But in the near future, it might not be possible to make a distinction, whether it's art, visual art, or music, or language. Probably when a day would come when the products of artificial intelligence and the products of humans are indistinguishable. When that happens, what do we do? How do we keep our pride of being conscious? I mean, if being conscious does not have any computational benefit, then what is the significance of being conscious? Of course, we can be on the receiving side. I mean, when we eat something, we have delight. When you eat really nice sushi, you feel delight. And artificial intelligence systems, as for all we know, do not have the sensory qualia that would support such pleasure. So we can, just sit back and relax and consume whatever is provided by artificial intelligence systems. Maybe not in terms of culinary delights, but in terms of creative works like art and music and even literature, or even a religious text like the Bible. I mean, if a day comes when an artificial intelligence system comes up with a really wonderful biblical text, and we find it irresistible, would new religion be born? This is a kind of interesting idea, but you never know. I mean, because we are at a loss, I think increasingly at a loss, to say exactly what it is that is uniquely human and what is uniquely conscious. With that really difficult situation in mind, I think we really need to start thinking how we can make interesting collaboration between humans and who are conscious and artificial intelligence systems who are not conscious. This collaboration with conscious human being and unconscious machine intelligence actually have predecessors, I think, because as it is, the human brain is constructed precisely in that manner. Because vast majority of cognitive processing is done unconsciously. So, in a sense, we have an artificial intelligence system within the brain. Because when I say things like this, of course I am aware of what I'm saying. And this is not sleepwalking. And I say things that make sense to me. But the way these words are prepared comes from my unconscious mind. I do not actually have control over which words would come next. I have a very vague intuition about what I'm going to say, but the precise sentence and the precise way it is produced is beyond my conscious control. So in a sense, we do have artificial intelligence-like system within our brain. I mean, probably we have a chatbot within the brain, each of us. Something probably worse than the GPT-3 or Bing Chat, or probably better than Bing Chat, but some people are probably worse than Bing Chat, I don't know. Anyway, we do have that. So, when we consider the coexistence of man and machine, then there's this precedent, because the way the conscious mind and the unconscious mind interacts within our very own brain is something similar to the way we would be interacting with artificial intelligence systems in the future. So when you consider that, probably the artificial intelligence systems is an extension of the unconscious mind, although it's physically external and we do not have access to it directly. The way it interacts with the conscious mind is something similar to the way we interact with our own unconscious mind. So from that perspective, the way to design an interface between our human beings and artificial intelligence systems might take some lessons from the way the human brain facilitates the interface between the conscious and unconscious cognitive processes. So I know Freud has a bad reputation nowadays, but I don't care what the people say. I mean, I think Sigmund Freud was great in identifying the importance of the role of unconscious. I'm not endorsing the specific theories that he put forward, but I do think the general idea that the unconscious is a really important aspect of our existence has traction. So, when you look at the human brain and when you observe yourself, you would realize that the unconscious is sometimes malicious. I mean, you become jealous and you have, unethical desires, and these things cannot be helped. And when a human brain gets out of balance, the usual manifestation is through the unhinged exhibition of unconscious processes, so that you say nasty things out of control and you actually cannot inhibit your unconscious self, and that's a lot of trouble. So it's quite similar to what's happening in artificial intelligence now. I mean, large language models produce sentences that would be produced by our unconscious self. And when we have successful conscious control of what we say, we don't say these terrible things. But when we do not have such a efficient control of our unconscious self, then we do say these things, right? I mean, so being chat, unhinged, and saying all these nasty things about the user, and is something similar to what's going on in our unconscious mind. So probably there's a hint for designing the interface between humans and machines, and now I'm in the Roppongi area. Maybe you can hear some noise. I mean, this is a famous night district with a lot of bars and restaurants and so on. And I would have gone into one of the restaurants or bars if I was not to appear in a TV show, live TV show. But I can't have a drink or something today because I need to remain sober. Otherwise, I would be behaving like an unhinged artificial intelligence, or more likely, I would sleep in the studio on the live TV. That would be terrible. Anyway, so I think we will have probably 10 more minutes or so before I reach TV Asahi. Actually, I'm quite early, so probably I will stop recording before TV Asahi. Probably I will stop recording in Roppongi Hills, and so we will probably have 10 more minutes or so. So we need to be concluding this discussion, which I enjoyed, but I hope you have enjoyed. So where are we? In my research group, we are focusing on collective intelligence, and we are starting a new project on collective intelligence. And it might be actually a really great way to control artificial intelligence, because each of us cannot be trusted. I mean, we cannot provide a robust cognitive machine in the biological sense, of course, by one person alone. Because, for example, if you consider President Trump, he seems a nice person, but if President Trump go unhinged and has whatever he likes, then it will be a terrible business for the United States and the world at large. The United States government is functioning because it is a collective effort, right? So one consciousness is not so stable. But when you have collective consciousness, then it becomes robust. The same can be said about artificial intelligence, probably. One system isn't so great. But if you put a society of artificial intelligence, then probably, hopefully, we can make it robust. So, probably there's a hint there by augmenting the failures of each agent, whether natural or artificial, we can make the behavior of the system as a whole robust and safe and benign. That's how a system based on diversity would win in the long run, because a system based on dictatorship, for example, might actually be efficient in the short period of time, because if the dictator is intelligent and although self-serving, considers the benefit of the population from time to time, then he or she would be able to reign and govern relatively robustly. But when the dictator dies and somebody succeeds, or with the age he or she might deteriorate cognitively, then it will be a really terrible state of affairs for the nation in question. So, parliamentary democracy is sometimes insufficient, but it is more robust than a dictatorship or authoritarian government, because it, checks and balances each other's imperfection, and that's how human society have survived so far. So, even though we have imperfect artificial intelligence systems and imperfect humans, if we can provide a way for robustly making an interaction between these individual agents, then maybe we can make the system more robust and in the long term sufficient and efficient and creative. So it seems to be the case that in many perspectives, what we have here is a situation where we need to make a robust and organic interaction between agents anyway, whether it's natural or artificial. Maybe we shouldn't make any distinction between the natural and artificial agents in the future, because artificial intelligence systems will become more human-like and even superhuman-like in the near future. So what we should do is to design a system of networks where we would have organic interaction between these agents, and that would hopefully make this system robust. And that's what human society is in the best scenario today, and what that should be what the society of mind made of artificial and natural agents should be in the future. So I'm coming to the Roppongi crossing, and there are many people, and there are so many people. I think they are having fun, or they're going to have fun. But it's really difficult to find a way of. It's really difficult to find a way of organic interaction between people. It is a ill-posed problem, but we should try that because, and the important thing is that because we are producing artificial intelligence, the dynamics of interaction in society is changing. We already see power shifts in humans. Different types of people having more power compared to some time ago, right? I mean, geeks having their day, and politics is concerned with the distribution of wealth in a different way, and we have crypto, NFT, Web3, DAO, and all these newly emerging technological things, and we need to pivot, and so we really need to keep this conversation alive. Maybe we should do this long walk from time to time, because things are so rapidly changing, and large language models are rapidly developing, and there's this really intense combination of talent and money, because there's the smell of money in artificial intelligence now. So many talented people are, just going there. So there's this chain reaction, and there's this crucible of talent and money. So we really need to keep an eye on that. And so thank you for listening to this episode of Street Brain Radio. I'm approaching Roppongi Hills now, and I'll be finishing this recording, which lasted for 73 minutes now. Oh, this is a record. And anyway, so I need to probably sum up in the Lex Friedman-like way what I've been discussing with you. Because I don't have a counterpart, I need to do a monologue, because I don't have the sophisticated organizational power to invite a guest, and because I'm walking in Tokyo. So where was I? Yeah. So I think the conclusion is that we need to have a society of mind where the mind can be produced by natural or artificial agents, and we need to have our manner of interaction where diversity is taken into account, and we start from the assumption that there's no single perfect agent, whether it is natural or artificial. So we need to have a system where we augment each other's imperfection in a robust manner. I think that's a wonderful conclusion for this episode of Street Brain Radio. Thank you for listening, and I would love to meet you again on the next episode of Street Brain Radio.